Haha! Good evening. Welcome to another musical musing. My name is Jim Hustwit. Today's live is about copyright. It was Angelo who got in touch asking about this, and there's a couple of other people who've been asking similar questions. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about music copyright with particular regard to production music and sync opportunities with advertising. So in terms of who owns what part of the pie you're going to have to give up. But then I'm also going to have a look at kind of like the income streams as well that are associated with production music, and how you get paid, and how much you can expect to get paid, although I'm probably not going to answer that question. So yeah, as ever, just before I dive in, if you're new to the channel, welcome. If you are interested in anything music related, this channel is dedicated to helping music makers monetize their music with a focus on production music and sync. But if that's of interest, if you're interested in writing, producing, mixing, also the business aspects of being a freelance composer or producer, then hit the subscribe button and ring my bell so that you are the first to find out whenever I post. So let's dive into music copyright, the legal side. Don't be put off if it feels a bit bland. It's a very important part of understanding your rights as a composer or a music producer and what you can expect. So important, I've actually prepared a slideshow. Don't say that, I'm not organized. Okay, so music copyright, I suppose, can be basically split into two pieces of the pie. There is master copyright and the publishing copyright. The master copyright is generally associated with the recording. So say, for example, a record label pays for the recording of an album. They own the rights to those recordings. However, if you wrote the songs, you own the publishing copyright. You own the songwriting copyright in its most simple form. It gets more complicated if you have a publishing deal, because obviously the publishing copyright will then be owned by the publisher, and so therein, so as you dig in deeper, it gets more complex. But this is just surface sort of level. So that's the breakdown of the sort of two specific parts of the pie. In relation to production music, so I'm just going to sort of talk you through this in relation to if you sign over some music to a production music from like BMG, Universal, or a different library company. It is slightly different for Pond 5 and people, but I'm talking about the sort of the major label libraries and even the independents. Production music works basically by you write a piece of music, you are then assigning 100% of the copyright to the production music company. So if that's Universal, you are basically giving them the rights to the recording of that music, and you are also giving them the publishing rights as well, although you will retain a portion of them. They in exchange will take that music, and because they have an exclusivity on that music, they then obviously market it and market it to their sort of all of their different clients, whoever they may be all around the world, in the hope of generating you a sync. So it's totally normal if you're signing a library music contract that you no longer have the rights to the recording to that song. You no longer own the rights to that piece of music. It's totally normal, because a publisher, even if like a TV company, if you do some work for a TV company, they basically need to be able to syndicate that music or TV program all around the world, and they, in order to be able to do that, need to have 100% control of the rights to it. So that's how it works for production music. So for those of you who aren't familiar, let's say, for example, I've written a piece of music, it gets synced on a sort of Disney program. Boom, when it gets synced, I am due a mechanical or sync fee. Now, that is not tied to the master rights. That is agreed separately to the master rights, and it will vary depending on the company. So, for example, Universal will give you 25% of mechanical royalties due. I think EMI still give 50%. And then there are also variations with like West One, for example, who will give, I think, 50% on the UK. This is based on contracts that I did a while ago, so I'm not 100% sure. It could have changed since. But then there's also they have like sub clauses. So anything in the US, you will only receive 30% of, or 25%, whatever. So it varies on a contract by contract basis. But once upon a time, you used to get 50% across the board. However, that amount is getting eroded over time. So that will vary. But that's the first revenue stream with production music. It's your mechanical or sync fee. the mechanical basically refers to the mechanical pressing of a record. So every time your piece of music is reproduced for sync, essentially you would due a mechanical fee. In the UK, that is paid generally by the library. So the MCPS collects mechanical royalties in the UK. In the US, you need to sign with someone to handle that on your behalf. I think Harry Fox Agency in the US tends to be the big one, but in the UK it's the MCPS that look after that. But they will account all of the mechanical royalties to the library, and then the library will, on a quarterly basis or however many times a year, account back to you how much you're owed. So let's say, for example, I'm owed sort of 25% of mechanicals. Each quarter the library will send me a check for 25% of the total number of mechanicals collected and delivered to them by the Mechanical Rights Society. So that's phase one of your revenue stream. Phase two is the PRS, the royalties, which are paid out by the Performing Rights Society. So that's the PRS in the UK, or there's GEMA in Germany, SACEM in France, BMI in the US, and ASCAP. So that's the next part of the puzzle, and that's what's often termed the back end. So you've got the front end, which is the mechanical or the sync fee. I will just say as well, what I didn't mention in the sync fee, particularly in the US, but also in the UK, sometimes a specific fee is arranged up front for the usage of that music. And again, what you receive will be based on the agreement that you've signed with whichever production music company that is. That can be anywhere from 10% to 100%, depending on the deal. Probably rare that you're going to get 100%. And then the PRO, so basically the royalties are the back end. So the sync is for the synchronization. The royalties is for the subsequent broadcast of your music to picture. So my track goes out on a series on the BBC. PRS in the UK will work out, how that is, and I'm not going to go into how that's calculated, but then I'm paid a back-end royalty. Now, the wonderful thing about the PRS is that they will always pay the songwriter a minimum of 50% of all the royalties collected for broadcast. They will not go below 50%. Obviously, they'll pay someone else completely, but the PRS protect the songwriter by paying them a minimum of 50%, which is brilliant because that means that amount can't be eroded. Although it can be eroded and sometimes does do by underhanded publishers signing weird deals where you have to sign back money, but don't go near those. So there you go. So that's basically kind of how that works. So you will be signing over the rights. You will generally get a 50-50 split in terms of publishing of the songwriting in terms of the back end. So you will always get 50% from PRS, and then the publisher will take the other, or the library will take the other 50%. And then, as I say, on the front end, the sync fee, that's open to negotiation, but anywhere between 50, usually probably not going to be more than 50, or rarely. If you are licensing an ad directly, if you're going through another company, if you're going through a music agency, then that can be different. But ad licensing is a bit different because sometimes, more often than not, you will retain 100% of the copyright for the piece of music, and then you will license it to the client. So let's say in this instance, it's ESPN. You retain the master rights. You are licensing it to ESPN. Now, that could be for a specific period of time. It could be in perpetuity, which means forever, or it could be for a year, 2 years, whatever. So generally, when you are costing, you're putting together a cost proposal for how much it will cost to do a piece of music for that TV ad, you will take into consideration things like which territories or countries it's going to be broadcast in. The more countries it's going to be broadcast in, the higher the higher you're going to charge, the more you're going to cost up for that. Then there's also questions of media. Is it just going to be broadcast online, or is it going to be on major TV channels, or is it just on cable TV? Again, depending on the media and how many countries, that price will fluctuate and generally go up. The more countries are involved and the more media. And then it's also for how long. So I mentioned at the beginning, in perpetuity, that's forever. If you were going to sort of sign something over in perpetuity, again, that would be a much higher fee than if you'll say, I'm going to license this to you for, so let's say, a year. So that is kind of music copyright in a nutshell when it comes to production music and TV sort of sync licensing. A couple of other things I sort of throw in as well is the PPL. So PPL basically collect money. So if, say for example, a record is used in a TV ad and you played bass guitar on it, the PPL will collect for the musicians who performed in that recording. So, you know, if you played guitar, drums, whatever, and you are registered with PPL and the PPL are aware of that exploitation, you will receive a fee from them for any live performances as a result of that. And the other thing I should mention as well is, like, one good thing about streaming when it comes to sort of Spotify or YouTube is you get both mechanical and back-end and performance related royalties. So Angelo, one of the questions Angelo asked was about TuneCore, you know, sort of these middle houses, publishing houses like TuneCore or Centric. Now, TuneCore, obviously, one of the things about TuneCore, well, I don't use TuneCore, I've not used TuneCore, I've not used Centric either. Essentially, these guys are publishers and they open the doors and you can sign your music over to them and they will try to exploit it on your behalf and take a cut. So I think for TuneCore, I think they take 15 or 20%, and Centric, I'm not sure. I didn't do enough prep work for this, did I? But they will take a percentage, which is fine. Now, Angelo was asking, is it worth signing music over to one of these companies? And yes and no. It's a tricky one because on the one hand, if you go to a publishing company with a huge back catalogue of highly exploitable music, you will probably be able to get a better deal than if you're doing it for a couple of tracks that you've released. However, the flip side to that is it better to have a company out there promoting your music rather than it just sitting on your hard drive? Because obviously if you've signed the music over to Centric, then somebody is exploiting it. Now, therein lies the rub, because this is the thing with publishers. They will generally have a massive catalogue of music. When you sign over your music, the question is, are they going to be actively trying to get it synced? Are they actively going to be promoting it or sort of using it? And unless you are sort of quite high profile, probably not is the answer to that. But that's not to say that, you know, great things can't happen. Sometimes tracks do get synced for TV through these companies, and that's amazing, because then that in turn sort of, like, you know, people shazamming it, which then throws up your Spotify views, which then all of a sudden it can sort of explode. But it's a weighing up the question of, do you feel that publisher is going to be actively promoting you? If not, well, if they aren't, it's like, can you find a smaller publisher that will? It's tricky, because generally publishers, they want as much material as possible than what they choose to promote or what they get away. They will generally receive music searches from media owners, they will then go through their catalogue and they will sort of create a short list of tracks which they put forward. Obviously, if your track doesn't get featured in those searches, then and they obviously can't put everyone's in there, but it can be useful. And I know of somebody who has used Centric, and their music gets played sort of like in broadcasting shops around the country, maybe even in Europe, and they get, you know, like sort of quarterly paychecks from that. TuneCore as well, I think one of the thing is about TuneCore and things, people like AWAL, is that they're an aggregator, so they're a way for you to get your music out on digital platforms. There are other companies now which will take a flat fee rather than percentage, Angelo. So yes, I've not had any specific experience with any of those sorts of publishers, so I'm not probably the best person to ask for. There's another one called Taxi in the US, but I kind of feel like, I think you have to pay to get your music put in front of people, and I'm kind of not down with that, really. It's sort of pay to play sort of thing. It sort of feels a bit like a scam. But, you know, hey, if you've had a good experience, then please do you know, pop your comments in the chat and let me know. Or if you've had any experiences with any of this, then please do get in touch and let me know. Hopefully that sort of covers general sort of the copyrights. Just remember those two things: copyright masters, and then the master, which is the recording, and then the songwriting. As the composer and the if you've recorded it, you own both. But when you sign for a publishing deal with a production music company, you are signing them over, and you sign 100% of the master rights, and you are getting a certain percentage, the songwriter's percentage of publishing, which is where your PRS and back-end royalties come from. Cool. Let me come out of this then. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. Ollie Barton raises an interesting point here. Really interesting topic. It's certainly an important element for writers to know about. Essentially, that all writers sign up to PRS as soon as possible before putting any work out there. Definitely. If you write music, then I think it's £100 to sign up for the PRS. but you'll be amazed how little bits can trickle through from sort of, I mean, even if you're gigging live, even as a live band, if you play, well, you're not at the moment during the middle of a pandemic, but as a live band, if you report your gigs, so when I was performing live, I'd get, it's only like, it's probably enough to cover my tube fare to the gig. But by reporting every single live gig that you do, you get a sort of royalty from the PRS. That probably speaks more about the size of the venue that I was playing rather than the amounts. But yeah, PRS, they're collecting for people, and if you write music, then definitely sign up for them. Ollie has used TuneCore and Centric before. TuneCore are terrible. Will never get you any opportunities. Centric, however, is a great place to start and have been great for my work. They work on a 25% cut. Well, there you go. Ollie Barton's answered that. TuneCore were terrible. Centric are great. I can't speak personally, and I don't speak on behalf of Ollie Barton, but Centric seem pretty good. I've had conversations with Centric before. I've not done anything with them, because I think with Centric as well is you can sign over the rights, but then if you decide you want to leave, they will give it back to you if you give them a month's notice. So it's not like a long-term binding agreement. Ollie, what's the other thing you said? I've used to. Oh, you just said you posted the same thing twice. All right, thanks, Ollie. Cool. Okay, so hopefully that is of use. Again, if you do have any specific questions, then let me know in the comments and I'll answer them. I've tried to keep this fairly compact because it's a big subject and this is relevant to production music libraries and stock. Oh, the one thing I didn't mention was about stock music is obviously the rights situation with stock music is it varies with, I think with, so for example with Envato or not Pond 5, what they get, Envato, whatever they're called, they offer different deals depending on whether you're exclusive with them or not. So if you are exclusive to them, they will give you a higher fee per track used than if you go for a non-exclusive. If you go non-exclusive, that means you can have your music on Pond 5, Audio Jungle, that was one, Pond 5 and Audio Jungle. Obviously, the kind of the rights thing doesn't apply the same way because there's no back-end royalties. You're only getting a specific fee. And I'm not 100% sure, but I would imagine you are signing over the master rights to that piece of music, because otherwise, assuming it's an exclusive deal. If not, I don't know what I'm talking about. I've never used the stock music library, but it's a different model to the majors and the independents like Audio Socket and what have you. Point to mention there with Audio Socket as well, they don't do mechanicals, so don't expect any mechanical payments from it's a blanket agreement with them, so there's no mechanicals involved. So yeah, hopefully that was useful. Please do let me know questions, comments in the chat, in the forum. I'm taking a hiatus now for 2 weeks for Christmas, but back in the first week of Jan again with a live YouTube and Facebook Live every Tuesday night, and then releasing a new video on YouTube on every Thursday. And I'm covering everything from producing and writing music to mixing music to the business challenges associated with being a freelance composer and producer. And in addition to that, sometimes touching on kind of some of the mental health issues that we perhaps aren't as aware of, which come with being locked away in isolation, basically. So yeah, thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.